It started like any other haunting story. Missing objects, strange noises in the walls, the feeling of being watched. But what if the truth is far darker than ghosts? What if this thing lurking around your home was an actual person? This is the terrifying story of Daniel LaPlante and how he turned a family's home into his personal nightmare. And it started off with just a phone call, and it ended in something far worse than anyone could have ever imagined. In a small town in Massachusetts in 1986, 15-year-old Tina Bowen and her younger sister Karen were gathered around a Ouija board. They were trying anything to contact their mother after tragically losing her to cancer the year before. Now, they got nothing from this Ouija session, but it started a disturbing chain of events that would change their lives forever and lead to 3 horrific murders. So, the night that the sisters used the Ouija board, they started to hear knocking on the walls while they were trying to sleep. Terrified and excited at the same time, they thought their mother was actually trying to contact them. So they got up out of bed and they started asking who they thought was their mom questions. But over the next few weeks, the knocking became much more aggressive, and it started to disturb their sleep and really scare them. Their father just assumed that they were stressed from grief, but the unexplainable haunting became much more intrusive. Understanding that this couldn't be grief, Frank began to investigate. He noticed that beverages would disappear from drinking glasses and objects moved around the home. The TV would change channels on its own, and disturbingly, furniture would be moved from one side of the house to the other. One night when Tina and Karen were watching TV, they heard knocking coming from underneath them. So terrified, they got up, ran to the kitchen, grabbed a knife, and descended the stairs into the cellar. When they got down into the cellar, they looked on the wall and they found a note written in red that said, "I'm in your room, come and find me." The next day, the girls told their dad what happened, and he continued to be a skeptic. In the back of his mind, though, he knew something strange was going on, and so once again, he blamed it on grief, but this time he sent them off to counseling. On December 8, 1986, Frank and his 2 daughters returned home from an outing. When they walked inside, they noticed that the toilet had been used but not flushed. So Frank walked around the house to investigate, and when he got to his room, he noticed something was off about his closet. So he slowly walked to his closet, opened the doors, and that's where he found Daniel LaPlante crouched down with a painted face, a hatchet in one hand, and a wrench in the other. So after Frank found him, Daniel calmly got up, ordered the entire family into the bedroom, and while he was threatening them with his weapons, somehow Tina was able to get away, and so she ran down the hallway out the front door over to a neighbor's house, and they called the police from there. But when the police arrived, Daniel was already gone. But by this point, the damage was done. They were shaken up and unsettled at the fact that whatever was disturbing them, it wasn't a ghost. It was an actual person living in their walls watching them, which was Daniel LaPlante. While the police investigated, the Bowen family understandably was too scared to stay in their own home. But a couple of days later, Frank decided he had to go back home to pick up a few things. When he arrived at his house, he noticed some movement in his front window. When he walked up to get a closer look, what he saw in front of him, staring right at him, was Daniel LaPlante. And so Frank rushed back to the house where he was staying and called the police. But once again, when the police arrived, Daniel was gone. And so the police searched the entire outside of the home and the inside of the home. Once they got to the kitchen, they found 2 kitchen knives stabbed into 2 family photos with notes on each one that said, "I'm still here, come and find me, and I'm going to kill you." This time, the police decided they weren't going to leave the property. So, once again, they searched the entire property, inside and outside of the house. And strangely enough, they couldn't find footprints coming to or from the house. And so they realized he had to have been somewhere where they haven't looked yet. After hours of searching, eventually they found a small crawl space in the bathroom that housed the plumbing. But to get to it, you had to lift yourself up over a foundation wall, squeeze through a small 8-inch opening, and finally drop down into the space where it was just big enough to crouch down and hide. Police realized you can get to this area through the cellar, and so one of the officers went to the cellar and they squeezed through with their gun drawn. And as they walked further, what they saw, or what they thought they saw, was a pile of clothes. But it was actually Daniel LaPlante. And so finally, after all this time, after terrorizing the Bowen family, he was finally arrested. And once he was taken into custody and walked out the house, Tina realized that this was someone she had actually been on a date with. 1 year later, after being arrested, Daniel's mother was able to post his bail. But not long after he was released, he began breaking into homes again. His mom began to notice that he had a lot of cash for somebody who was unemployed, and so she started to search her entire home. She found a gun that he had stolen the day before and also more cash. About a month after that, Daniel broke into the home of Priscilla Gustafson. No one was home, but he stole cable boxes, TV remotes, and a couple of cordless phones. 2 months after his first break-in, Daniel broke into the Gustafson house again. But this time, Priscilla and her 2 young kids were home. Once he broke in, he shoved her 5-year-old son into a closet with makeshift restraints, went after Priscilla, tied her up, and murdered her. After murdering Priscilla, he went after the 2 young kids, took them into 2 separate bathrooms, and ended up drowning them. After his reign of terror, he went to his niece's birthday party like nothing had happened. When Priscilla's husband, Andrew, arrived home, he noticed that his house was eerily quiet. It was too quiet. Usually when he arrived home, his children would be running around, but this time they were nowhere to be found. And so when Andrew walked to his bedroom, that's where he found his wife Priscilla shot. And so he immediately called the police, and when the police arrived, he admitted that he was too afraid to look for his kids because their silence was a bad sign. Police immediately began the investigation, and they noticed that the Gustafson nameplate was missing along with a few other items. Police dogs were able to track a scent between the Gustafson home and Daniel's mother's house, and right in between that area was where they found a shirt, the nameplate, and gloves with gunshot residue on it. And so by this point, the dogs were able to lead police all the way to Daniel's mother's house. When Daniel noticed they were coming, he fled the scene, but when the police searched the house, they found the weapon used to kill Priscilla Gustafson and a lot of other stolen items. Manhunt ensued, but the search didn't last long. Police found Daniel hiding in a dumpster just 2 days after committing the murder. In 1988, Daniel was found guilty of 3 counts of murder and was sentenced to 3 life sentences. Since being in prison, Daniel LaPlante has filed multiple lawsuits complaining of prison conditions and lack of education and lack of exercise. Just 8 years ago, Daniel appealed for a reduced sentence, but the judge denied it. And he told Daniel that he clearly does not regret the hideous crimes that he committed. And to this day, Daniel remains in prison, exactly where he belongs.